Are you even thinking of turkey hunting yet, or no?
You know, I took wise words from Larry Weishuhn and just don't follow those big old thunder chickens around too much. I don't hunt feathers as he would say.
I'm gonna
But I
t-
did.
I'm gonna share a story about that when we get going here. But I'm gonna start by saying welcome to Blake Barnett. Blake is originally from the Texas Hill Country. He is longtime friends with somebody who got me started, put me under his wing, Larry Weishuhn. You know Larry, Mr. Whitetail. Blake, welcome to Deer Talk Now. And also, Blake is with Trailing the Hunter's Moon TV show, which Larry started, I don't know how many years ago. Welcome.
That is that. Well, thank you so much, guys, for having me. Really, truly do appreciate this opportunity.
Absolutely. So tell us about. Let's talk about the show first. When did you get started with the show, and what did you do before that?
Yeah, so like you said, Larry Wassoon, trailing the hunter's moon actually came. It was an idea of mine. I went to him. Larry Weishuhn and I go back over 20 years, just like you. He's blazed a trail for me in this incredible industry that we are blessed to have a part in. That I know is not easy. And I met Larry Weishuhn over 20 years ago. I was full time in another profession with a passion of being in this industry, and a window of opportunity happened for me through another gentleman that you may remember, Mr. Kim Hicks,
Yep.
with Hunting 201
Yep.
Beyond the Basics. Um, I'd known Kim as well, and Kim kind of brought me under his wing as a cameraman, which led me to meet Larry Weishuhn in a hunting camp, who,
Oh wow.
yes, pretty much called Mr. Hicks and said, I'm stealing your cameraman, and that's how it happened. And I went to work for Larry then when he was the host of Winchester World of
Yep.
Whitetails and Orion Multimedia Production. And it just took off from there, Dan. And throughout those years, we did Winchester World of Whitetails. Larry also, did stuff for North American Hunter, as a co-host with those guys, and went on to do several other shows and that were pretty much owned by other production companies. And he and I sat down one day. He had written the book Trailing the Hunter's Moon, won a bunch of awards, and
Stoger Press, I believe, right?
that's
Yep.
correct. And as a field producer and then producer for him, I said, why do we not do? You wrote this great book. People know you as Mr. Whitetail, but Mr. Weishuhn is hunted all over the world. And I said, let's just do this. Let's do this and call it Trailing the Hunter's Moon. And there was no need to convince him. He was on board, and he at that point took it under his own wing, to just do his own production and have full ownership of it. And the show today is now going into its 17th season.
Dang, that's awesome.
And Larry has been gracious to just introduce me to so many people. I've gotten, the sponsors have been pretty much the same during that whole time, and I've been able to build those same relationships. Thank you to Mr. Weishuhn, and he's graciously passed it down to me.
So is
Wanting
is Larry still? I haven't talked to him in quite a few years. Is he still working with you on the show, or has he stepped away from it?
he has stepped away from the show. Larry, is my gosh, he's the Godfather. He's been going at this forever,
Yeah.
and he had an opportunity. He lived in Uvalde, Texas, for his whole career. His family is originally from the Columbus and Brenham area of Texas, over near Houston. He had an opportunity to move closer to them. His mother was elderly, who's since passed away, and he needed and wanted to slow down on the global travels and all the travels it required to do a television show. When we launched Trailing the Hunter's Moon, we were doing 26 originals a year,
That's a lot.
and that's a lot. And we were doing them globally,
Yeah, I mean, you guys are
and
in Africa, and you were, I mean,
Asia, South
everywhere.
Pacific, everywhere, and the show doesn't go there now since the pandemic, and it's been a nice break to not have to kill myself and kill ourselves to do that. But no, Larry is doing a lot of things. He's still very involved. It's giving him an opportunity to do more writing and more blogging and more on the digital side, and still works with the great partners of such as Dallas Safari Club, doing as an ambassador there and doing fine things, for that organization and for conservation, and still very involved with, Texas Wildlife Association, which is, he's one of the founders of, And so it's given him that free time to do that. But just saw Larry Saturday night. I'm lucky I have my voice back. I was the MC of a big conservation fundraising event in San Antonio, Texas, where we broke records and made history for black rhino conservation. We sold an item for $500,000, one auction item. And you're going to hear more about that. It's going to hit Outdoor Wire in a lot of places here in the next couple of days. And Larry was with me as a part of that as well.
That's
And that was with DSC South Texas, which is a chapter of DSC, and I serve on the board on that.
That's fantastic. Yeah. Well, Blake, I'm going to talk. Well, there's a lot of things I want to talk to you about. I'm going to tell you a Larry story though, because you were talking about turkey. So let's repeat that. What did you say about? What did Larry tell you so many years ago about turkeys?
I don't hunt feathers.
You don't hunt feathers. Well, I have proof of this. So this goes back to, I believe, I started here 94, 95. This was either 1996 or 1997. I can't remember which year, but it was in Texas at the Nail Ranch. Sherry Fears with Thompson Center, and Larry and myself, and I believe Bryce Towsley. So we're turkey hunting with those contenders, those black powder shotguns. And it was Larry, and I wish I could remember the guide's name. I don't remember his name. I think his name was Craig, if I remember this correctly. But anyways, it's Larry, and I'm this apple cheek. Oh my God, I get to kill a turkey, you know. So they were driving out in the middle of the dark of the morning, and they knew something I did not know. So they let me out. They come up to the first thing, and the guy said, "Well, who's out?" And Larry looks at him, and he looks at him, and I'm like, "I'll go." Yeah, Dan, go ahead. So I go out there. I swear to God, it was within 10 minutes. It just starts pounding rain, and I'm sitting by a mesquite tree, nothing around me, completely drenched head to toe, and I look, and in Texas, you guys have these they're like little lean-tos where you can like put a tractor underneath.
Yeah.
Probably not the smartest thing to do in a rainstorm, but I crawled underneath it to get out of the rain. Well, the rain stops within about an hour and a half. I'm soaked head to toe. I thought I heard a turkey gobble, so I start cutting like crazy. It starts pouring rain again. Here comes a gobbler. And he is like a ball of wet rags. I kill that turkey, grab him, put him on lean-to with me. And here they come about 2 or 3 hours later, and they're, forgive my language, they're giggling their asses off because they see me all wet. And so I'm going to get these guys. So I get up and I walk up there, take my gun. It's all full of rain, and put it in the truck. And I said, "Oh, I forgot something. I'll be right back." And I come walking with that big gobbler. And you should have saw Larry's eyes. You know, he's like, "Okay. No way." But no, Larry, he was the Southern field editor for Deer and Deer Hunting when I started. And we didn't have too many. So we had Charlie Alsheimer, we had Larry Weishuhn, we had John Ozolga, obviously, just a who's who of whitetail brains. And he, back then and even to this day, he has been nothing but gentlemanly and he was always very eager to help, even when he was over with my friends at North American Hunting Club. Just a true gentleman and a wealth of knowledge. Came up as a biologist, did some landmark research on whitetail diseases, and that's awesome. Yeah. So I want to transition. I'm sorry, Blake. Go ahead.
No, he's the same person today. You know, Funny we're talking about it because he was supposed to go turkey hunting yesterday, and I said, "You're doing what?" And he said, "Yeah, I've got to go do something for Mossberg, and I need to go kill a turkey. I'm going to go to the Wyo Ranch." And then he calls me later yesterday and says, "I canceled." And I just started laughing, you know.
Because it's 95 degrees, right?
Yeah, exactly. But go ahead. No, it's awesome. Larry's the best.
You're originally from the hill country, right?
Yeah, born and raised in San Antonio. I live in Blanco, Texas, which is right where the hill country starts, not far from, maybe you've heard the German community Fredericksburg, where everybody travels to see. So that is where I originate from. Yes, sir.
So the hill country, if correct me if I'm wrong, is the Edwards Plateau. It's about 22, 23 counties in southern and central Texas.
Yeah, more central Texas, you know, from north of San Antonio, to the center type Belton region, if you know where Belton, Texas is, just north of Austin, and then kind of west over towards San Angelo, Texas, before you start getting into that southwest Texas region, more high desert
So what
country.
make and I know the answer to this, but what makes the hill country so special? Because people hear about it, and I wanted to educate the listeners and viewers as in case they didn't know what
Yeah,
is.
it's the most beautiful. It's a beautiful part of the Lone Star State, and from an outdoorsman, side of things, I mean, there's everything, from whitetail deer hunting to quail hunting to dove hunting to turkey hunting to, even the exotic species in the ranches that are doing a lot of, sustainable utilization conservation practices. I mean, it is just it's a hunting plethora of opportunity, for the outdoorsmen and hunters from across our nation visit Texas, visit, the hill country, and second they would visit the brush country of South Texas for their whitetail deer that are known down there. But no, the hill country is full of history, with all the small towns and communities that are around there, and unfortunately Texas is growing too dang fast, with people moving into it from California, and we're starting to see these smaller towns kind of get taken over, and I hate to see that, but it's still it's the heart of whitetail deer hunting and turkey hunting and all that right here in Texas for sure.
The game is incredible. That's why I have this photo here. This photo is one of the better deer I've ever killed. It was in Schleicher County, which is in the hill
Oh
country.
yeah, yeah,
Just shy 160, Steve and Michelle Anderson's place, Vaudeville, and it was with Tim Anderson, our beloved past friend from Mossy Oak.
yeah.
The thing that I wanted to bring out there, because I always try to do some research before we do these podcasts.
Sure.
So people say, well, Texas is all high fences. No, it's number one. No, it's not. This was
No, it's not.
this was a wild deer, but I'm going to give everybody, and this might even surprise you, Blake. Schleicher County is 1,300 square miles. Okay, there's 2,400 people that live in Schleicher County. So 2,400 people, 1,300 square miles. Our hometown here, guys, Wapaka County, Wisconsin, 51,000 people, 51,000 versus 2,400, and 756 square miles versus 1,300 square miles. That's how you grow big deer. There's not a lot of people. There's a lot of land, and that diverse terrain that you have. And that's not every single county in Texas like that, but that is an example of why Texas can grow big deer.
Yeah, the ranches in Schleicher County are big ranches too, and going back to the rest of the hill country, Texas, with all the travels I do on the whitetail deer hunting side, across the Midwest, even Canada, yeah, it seems like we get kind of a pessimistic review, of, oh, you're all high fenced, and deer breeding and deer farming has become, was started here in Texas, and even Mr. Weishuhn was a part of that, but nobody had the expectations of it going to where it's gone today, and so it has caused some a negative impact on Texas. But, there's fewer of those places than there are the open native range places in Texas still today. I mean, Texas is a massive, massive state. I mean, listen, you hunt across the Midwest and the rut is the same time of year pretty much, across the Midwest. In Texas, the rut's 3 different times of the season, because the state's so large and the properties are so big. I've hunted both sides. I lease a personal ranch and it's free range, and I've killed up my best deer off it in the last 5 years is 180 and 6/8,
Wow.
6/8, typical frame deer. I met some of your team this past fall on a ranch up in the Texas Panhandle region, the Obar Lawrence Ranch, which is owned by some very dear friends of mine, and that's 43,000 acres, of a low fence. They've killed 180s on it, numerous times. My best deer on that place is, net 168 and 3/8. So yeah, I mean, I think, with digital media being so strong, and when the deer breeding and the high fence stuff was new, there were some spectacular deer being killed, and then word came after that these were high fence places, and even some of the high fence places, Dan, they're not deer breeding operations. Some of those are even 30, 40,000 acres or even more. You know what I mean? And I read reviews on social media and listen to people debate, stuff that have never even been on a property like that. And those deer are just as wild. And, Texas, we have the highest population of whitetail deer, or one of the highest populations of whitetail deer. And some of those high fences, literally for some of these ranches, are to keep deer out.
Right.
We have enough deer. It's just like Scotland and some of those places that have to compete against red deer. There's high fences in Scotland that are not farming red deer. That's to keep red deer out. And that's the truth in many cases with some of our counties here in Texas with the deer populations is ranchers need, the wildlife is competition also for the domestic animals, and there needs to be a balance. And our wild hog population is ridiculous.
Yep.
I would think a lot of that is started here too. And so those high fences play a major role. They're not just to raise whitetail deer behind, although with a fence you can do a whole lot more from a management standpoint, to balance a herd, to feed a herd, and maximize the most potential to raise a healthy deer herd, compared to a big wild open place where there's an inflection of deer like the Obar Lawrence Ranch that's 43,000 acres.
43,000 acres, and when you say low fence, basically what you're just saying, it's a ranch. It's like a cattle ranch.
And that is what it is.
It's a cattle ranch. It's got some barbed wire fences that the cattle can't get out, but deer certainly can jump a barbed wire fence.
Yeah,
what is it though? Is it just because I've tried to rack my brain on this over the entire time I've hunted Texas a lot. I've always been on a quote unquote cull hunt or a media hunt or no skin off my nose. I love it. I've been to places where I say, how many does can I kill? And I've had guys look at me weird, like the ranch manager's like, are you kidding me? I'm like, no, really. How many does can I kill? Yeah, I just want to hunt, and they let me do it. But when I get outside, back home or somewhere else, you get into the whole negative thing. Is it just because people have not experienced it, or can't wrap their heads around it, or jealousy, or why does Texas have that stigma? Because I know that high fences in Texas, like you say, 20, 30,000 acres, good luck. I'll let you go out there with as many tags as you want. You're not going to kill a 180-inch deer because I know how difficult it is. Why are those negative stereotypes there still today?
I'm glad you asked that question. To me, we have this discussion all the time. I think just our conservation groups and organizations we work with, I think hunting is just, especially since social media has come out now, that it's just the egos are just overwhelming. I mean, and I don't want to pick on the hunting community. It's the same in the fishing community too. You know what I mean? Just,
yep.
I think it's just, there's a jealousy. Texas has always had big deer, just like Canada and just like Kansas and just like Illinois, just like a lot of the other states across our nation, and, I think those people that are pointing fingers, haven't truly experienced what you just said. Some of these ranches that you've been on yourself, that are huge, that have an 8-foot fence around them, the perimeter of them, but that are, 200 square miles themselves, the property alone. And, and then I think it's competition amongst even some of the outfitters who just are competing for business. You know what I mean? That use that as a marketing tool to say, oh, you don't want to go down there, because it's high fenced, well, guess what? Texas was the first place to start putting the high fences, and now we have high fences across the Midwest, and we have high fences in Canada. You know what I mean? People saw what they could do, I think, with their deer herds, by managing them better in an enclosed property or a smaller enclosed property. But from a large property standpoint, it's still, to me, a free range hunt, and I think, people that actually finally experience it can change their minds, once they come down here and they hunt a large property and they go, wow, I'll tell you a story. Well, 3 years ago, or right pre-COVID, I was hunting a ranch down near McAllen, Texas, way down at the tip, right near the Mexico border. It's called the Los Islas Ranch. And Wildlife Systems is probably the largest outfitter in the state, one of the largest outfitters in North America, owned by Greg Simons, who's a wildlife biologist. And he's a partner of Trailing the Hunter's Moon. And he sent me down there to hunt this ranch. And it's about 13,000 acres, high fence, cattle operation. They don't feed the deer. protein. They don't, the deer get the same nutrition the cattle do. The rains have got to come, everything else. Mr. Simons does a helicopter survey for the property, to do a deer count. You don't count all those deer in a helicopter survey in the South Texas brush country due to thick brush. But there was a particular deer that he found that he really wanted me to hunt. I hunted that deer for a week. You know how many times I saw him?
Probably
One
none.
time.
Oh, one. Okay.
I saw him one time early in the morning, and it was legal light to shoot him. And at that time, he would have been the best. He was a net book deer. And I know that because the deer ended up getting killed later in the season by another hunter. He netted 175 and something.
Wow.
And he was a typical 11 point. Just to give you just an idea, just a straight up typical frame 11 point that netted 175. I saw him one time, and my cameraman wouldn't let me shoot him because we didn't have enough light, And like Mr. Weissing would say, there's hunting with a camera and there's hunting, and they don't have anything to do with each other.
I'm looking at my camera guys right now. They said, yeah, Dan would have shot that deer and never apologized for it. But
I still have the video clip on my phone that's been on my phone for this many years, and I look at that video clip every now and then, and it's grainy as all hell, and I just look at the beam length and the time length this deer had, and he was gorgeous, but I saw him one time in a week, and they didn't kill him till the end of the season, and our season, that season is an MLD ranch. So that season starts October 1 and ends the end of February.
Yeah, it goes all the way through February, doesn't it?
Yeah. So think about that time span, on a 12,000 acre, 12,500 acre property. I saw him once, and one other hunter saw him one other time. And this is an outfitted operation, or they run outfitted hunts, and it's not a property where you pay for a size of deer, or
Yep.
you pay for how many, a price for how many inches it is. It's you hunt a mature deer. You hunt the biggest mature deer you can find of 6 years of age and older, and so I just had, all I can say to those guys that don't understand or that want to make negative comments, most of those guys haven't tried it. They haven't been to it.
Don't knock it until you try it, is what I've always said.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you can't, then don't. But is it different? Yes. Texas does not have much public land, hardly at all.
Right.
Have a lot of hunters. What I can't wrap my head around is how you guys are killing so many deer, because, yeah, it's a big state, and yeah, you have a lot of hunters, but I know how. I mean, in where I'm sitting right now, I was giving you the example of our counties. We have like 18,000 deer hunters in this county. So those guys can kill a lot of deer. I don't know how you're doing that in some of these counties with such big ranches. I know they have their quotas, but it still, to me, is a feat how some of these Texas counties are putting up the harvest numbers that are necessary to manage those herds.
Well, think about it. I mean, in your counties up there alone, I mean, what do you think the average deer per acre is?
By us, it's, we've got 7,500 deer per square mile here. So, I mean, and that's way over prescribed. I mean, it should be 35 or less, but we've been over prescribed in this particular county for as long as I can remember, 30, 40 years. So, I mean, you're looking at just super high deer densities, lower age structure. I mean, it's not Texas. Not if you put that many hunters out there, you're not. Some guys can say they're practicing QDM, but they're on 40 acres of free range land. I was like, God bless you, good luck. But that 2 and 3 year old buck is getting killed when he walks over on the neighbor's property.
Yeah, Texas does have a very good management-minded group of hunters, or land. Let me just say, not just hunters, landowners. I think it comes, no doubt, starts with the landowners, the stewardship of the landowners. And you got a lot of ranches down here that have, a deer per acre, a deer per 2 acres. You know what I mean? And some of your open range ranches, like the Obar,
yeah,
1 deer per 10 acres. And the ranches that are, maximizing their conservation and wildlife management efforts are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, on their whitetail deer, low fence, high fence, and that's in supplemental feeding. Think about feeding a property. I don't know if you've heard of the Cactus Jack Ranch down here.
No, I have not.
In South Texas. Excuse me. I think it's around 5,000 acres. Last I heard, I think they had a deer per 2 acres.
Wow.
And they're feeding them. I mean, you're talking about $500,000 plus just a year and
Just in
feed
food, yeah.
food to feed these deer on a free range property, you know. So, that's why I say, landowners, the landowners, are the stewards of the wildlife down here,
But see, they're
not,
growing them. But how are they bringing hunters? Are they bringing that many hunters in to?
they're not bringing enough hunters in to probably offset those costs. I mean, some of those ranches have, like memberships, and some of those ranches actually outfit and sell hunts, but I think it's truly a passion of the landowners. A lot of these big ranches that produce, on an annual basis, averagely each year, the biggest deer, or the famous ranches that are known for producing quality deer. I mean, it's a passion. I mean, Texas is full of different associations, that have been created and started by landowners who share the same passion for whitetail deer. And you know, being just the size of Texas, being the largest state, there's just more of us that do that down here than there is across the Midwest and in other regions.
So where these guys come? I mean, is it oil money where these landowners are coming from?
A lot of it is. A lot of it's just ranches that have been in generations for years. Um, and whitetail hunting just became a necessity to survive. And started to outproduce cattle. From a market value. And a monetary standpoint. For the families to be able to make a living. Hunting plays a vital role now today in Texas ranching.
Have you
No
seen?
doubt.
What about hunter numbers in Texas? Is it still? Is there a dip there, or I mean, we've seen dips in some other states, but is it still steady as she goes?
Steady as she goes. I mean, I think we're seeing a rise. We have some new programs in Texas being offered by different organizations that are since this COVID pandemic. There's a lot of people that have now really reached out to Texas Parks and Wildlife on how they can learn to hunt because they want to.
Cool.
Concerned of food shortages, or high prices, that we're seeing now. I mean, a dozen eggs down here in Texas cost $9 right now. People are wanting how can they, how can they supplement and get their own food? There's an organization down here in Texas that started an adult hunting mentor program, and there's others that have done that too. Where they're taking their men and women. We're seeing a lot of women. I mean, divorce rates are high across our country, and families that were together used to hunt together don't hunt together anymore, and the women don't know if they have a place in that world, or they're raising their kids. Widowed women, and we are seeing a rise in women, on the hunting side and on the hunting license sales side, and we're seeing a lot of women come into these programs, wanting to learn how to, take a deer, gut a deer, dress a deer,
That's
cook
awesome.
a deer, the whole deal. So no, I mean, hunting, I mean, business for the hunting side, I think it's bigger now. I mean, speaking with such as, Wildlife Systems, my partner, they've been in business for 30 years. They've never seen anything like it. They've never been this busy. They actually have waiting lists out now to 11 years on some of their properties,
My goodness,
Yeah.
that's awesome, man. That's fabulous, and love to hear it. Especially love to hear it in a state that's as populated as Texas. Deer Talk Now is brought to you by Gamehide. At Gamehide, the philosophy is pretty simple. Design the best products with the best fabrics and features to help you be more successful in the field. While doing this, they strive to keep their pricing moderate to give you the best value in the hunting clothing industry. I wear the Limit Tick line of clothing to keep those nasty ticks off of me, and I absolutely love it. Check them out at gamehide.com. Let me shift the focus a little bit, Blake. Couple things that I wanted to talk to you about, because I know that you're very highly known for rattling, and that's one of your go-to tactics. It's something that I think a lot of deer hunters, especially Deer Talk Now listeners, maybe have tried, dabbled with. Maybe could you give us a few of your pointers on how you go about rattling during the season, when you do it? I know it's different hunting, but I know you've done it all over the place too, and that aspect of deer behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to give credit to Larry Weishuhn of learning a lot of that deer behavior, over my 20 years of working with someone who's lived with whitetail deer. So, I've learned a lot from that man, and I've taken what I've learned from him and have applied it to, just my own opportunities and my own, my own hunting career. So yeah, I talk about this a lot. I think the most important thing deer hunters need to understand, especially those that see us rattle on television and, or on social media when we put clips, that doesn't work everywhere you go. It doesn't always work when you go out there. I kind of relate it to the professional bass fishermen you watch on TV. The cameras are only rolling when those guys are catching the big bass, but they may go 5 hours without a bite. So deer density is important when it comes to rattling. You need to have, for the most success, be on a property where you have a high deer density, especially with a high buck density, where there are a lot of bucks, and a very good buck to doe ratio. When you're on a property where you have, say, a 1-to-1 ratio, there's a lot more competition for the bucks then. And, that pre-rut activity is normally is my favorite time of the season. Here in Texas, depending on what region you are, but let's just say the hill country, that pre-rut is the end of October. Or, in a lot of areas of the hill country, the rut starts really kicking off first of November, But that pre-rut right there before the rut, those bucks, are no longer friends, and they're claiming territories, and the minute I start really seeing the scrapes being checked and being, fresh again, in areas on ranches where I've already been, I always go back to those same areas. If I'm not seeing fresh scrapes on the ground, I'm a little too early. The minute I start seeing fresh scrapes on the ground, and in Texas, I don't care if it's 100 degrees, that's when I start thinking about rattling. That's to me when the mature bucks are, scattering the younger bucks and starting to say, hey, this is my home turf, and they start to get an attitude and they start to not like each other. And that's typically when I like to rattle. Now, I also have success during the rut, but sometimes during the rut, those bigger, older bucks are going to focus on something else when they have it in front of them. Just probably like us when we were young and went to the bars, and looking for a good looking girl. Once we've got her caught, we're not really interested in getting in a fight and losing them. So pre-rut for me is what I share with most of the deer hunters. I look for an area of a property where I know I've got a lot of deer and where I know I've got a lot of bucks, just based off sign that I'm finding and seeing. Wind, I like a really calm day. I don't like a windy day. It's hard to get the tone of those antlers to really carry very far on a windy day. And then, of course, your scent's even blowing around. And once you've gone into an area and exposed a lot of your scent, especially on a really big property where the deer are truly wild, it's going to hurt you. Antlers, you can't go out there with a small set of antlers that are just going to sound like toothpicks when you're rattling them together. If hunters really pay any attention to deer, deer movement and how deer fight, it's vicious. They're out to kill each other, and so they're you need a set of antlers that are going to carry a good tone, to sound like two mature deer, really fighting. And I'm aggressive, pre-rut or rut. I'm aggressive. Some guys will say, oh, pre-rut, I like to get out there and I like to tickle the antlers and this and that. Well, 2-year-old bucks will kind of do that because they've not had to fight for competition yet, and they haven't had to fight for love, really. So, but if you look at a 4-year-old buck or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8-year-old bucks get after it, that's out for blood. They truly will kill each other. It happens every year, and I've really surprised a lot of hunting guides, even on hunts where I'm guided and I want to take the set of horns and do the rattling. They don't understand. I couldn't believe how aggressive I am when I bang the horns together, and I make a lot of vocalization noises as well, because in my experience and being out there, as much as I'm out there, I listen and I pay attention. And those deer, when they're fighting, they're vocal. to me, it's like when they're out there to win, it's just like a UFC fighter. You see them weigh in, you see everything, and they're out there to intimidate their competition. And it's worked for me. That's all I can say. We've been able to capture that on video and share that a lot. And I tell guys, don't be afraid, to make a lot of noise. And some guys say, oh, only rattle for 30 seconds and stop. And if you really see two bucks get after it, sometimes they get after it for 10 minutes. Most of my success comes when I'm rattling, when the horns are going together. And even when I have a buck charge in, I don't stop rattling. If it's a buck I'm not interested in, I'm still rattling, because 9 times out of 10, another one's going to come from another area. I've rattled up 4 or 5. This past season was phenomenal for rattling. Probably my best, which y'all will see come third quarter. Probably my best year in my whole television producing, career. I think we timed everything perfect on all the ranches that we were on. I rattled up more bucks on camera this year in my entire career, and it was insane. And we shot some straight on a full charge, with our Marlin rifles, lever guns. It was just epic. It was awesome.
That's what I was going to ask. Are you doing most of your hunting with rifle then, or are you doing any bow hunting as well?
100% rifle. Yeah.
Okay.
Being an ambassador for Ruger and Marlin now, I'm shooting a lot of my deer this year with a Ruger #1 and in the new 1895 SBL.
Very cool. That was the next question was, let's talk about that for a minute, because I know you do have some preferences on calibers.
Yeah.
What are your go-to calibers for whitetail hunting?
I'm old school, man. 30-06,
Yes.
275 Rigby, which is the 7x57 Mauser. And this year I rocked him with a 45-70. It was just so much fun. And but I'm old school. I love a 308. I shoot a 308 a lot. I've used a 308 around the world on a lot of hunts, even. I'm just old school, man.
If you had to pick one of those, which caliber would you shoot? If I said you can only shoot one for the rest of your life, which one would you shoot?
As a deer hunter, or as just a hunter?
As a whitetail hunter.
Probably the 275 Rigby, the 7x57 Mauser.
I'll be darned.
I like that 140 grain. It's slower. It just, for whitetail deer, I don't know. It's kind of, there's a lot of history to that old caliber as well, and probably it would be that one. If it wasn't that one, it'd definitely be the 30-06 then.
30-06 is one I would say. If I've been shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor for about the past 4 or 5 years, just because I think it's cool and I like it. I've shot an 06 my entire life, just old school with that, the same way. I'm sure you've heard this. I've heard it a lot. When I went hunting in Texas the first few times, I took my trusty 30-06. I had a Remington, and then I had a Browning, and I had a couple other ones. And I don't know why this is stuck in people's heads, and you can educate. I'll let you educate everybody on this, but oh my God, that's too much gun for those small deer in Texas.
There's never too much gun for anything. I mean, people who think that, again, I think that's ego. I just think bigger's better all the time. I think people who say that, they're afraid of the recoil of a 30-06 because they shot it and don't know how to shoot very well. I mean, that's just my personal.
They didn't like it, but the other thing too.
Absolutely not. It's not too much gun.
Because I know you're very tied with Hornady as we are as well with our TV show. Yeah. It has to come down to bullet design, right? It doesn't really matter what gun you're shooting, as long as you match the bullet for the gun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I shoot my 30-06 a lot. I have several 30-06s. My favorite is one of my Ruger #1s. It's beautiful, but it's heavy, but I love to pack it around. I get a ton of feedback when people see it on TV or see it on social media. I used it a bunch this year. I used it probably for half my deer hunts this year. Shot an incredible deer in West Texas that we rattled in just on a full charge. And I'm shooting that 178 grain ELDX that Hornady puts out of that thing, and it's not failed me yet. It's not even failed me on other animals too, such as elk and mule deer, and shot several black bears with that same round, out of that same rifle. So no, I mean, listen, I know people. I mean, the hill country and regions of our hill country, our deer are much smaller, but don't make no mistake, where, that there's ranches in the Texas Panhandle and ranches down in South Texas that our deer weigh well over 200 pounds.
Yeah, I was going to say, I really haven't hunted a place where I've noticed a huge difference in size. I mean, yeah, you got, like you said, some of the bucks, you get a mature buck, yeah, a little bit. It's not a Saskatchewan, 250 pounds dressed, buck.
No, but you're talking, I mean, my own personal deer lease live weight on some of the deer I've killed are 220 pounds, 230
220
pounds.
pounds. So you're looking at 180 pounds field dressed,
Absolutely.
which is a big deer no matter where you go.
Exactly. And hill country, like where I live in Blanco, Texas, around there, that's that little region there, that Blanco, Texas, Kerrville, Texas, Rock Springs, across that part of the Edwards Plateau. Yeah, those deer are going to only dress 90 pounds. A lot of that is we have too many deer in that region.
Bucks?
Wait,
Mature
what's
bucks?
that?
Mature bucks?
Yeah.
Really? Wow.
Areas where you have way too many deer and not enough feed, or ranches not feeding them, or competition against livestock. Our deer are smaller, kind of right there through those little areas, those counties.
Mm-hmm.
Blacker County, the deer are in great shape. There's deer get big up there. They'll dress 150 pounds.
Yep.
All day
I
long.
think this one was like 160 something. The one that we got the picture there. It was a 7.5-year-old deer though. I mean, it's a heavy deer no matter where you go.
Absolutely.
So you're saying an 06 with a 140 grain bullet. Back in the day, we were shooting
178 grain.
178. Okay.
The 275 Rigby, which is a 7x57 Mauser, is 140 grain. I'm using that Hornady interlock bullet that they load in their custom load. Man, it just seems to do really well on whitetail deer down here. Punches a good hole, leaves a good blood trail. It's not a real fast bullet. I'm not a big speed guy myself. I mean, if I was precision shooting a lot more and really long range shooter, I'm not a long range hunter. I think hunting is about getting as close as we can to the animal, in my opinion. But so I'm not all about the speed. I'm about about that energy and about that that hard hitting, slow and hard hitting more than anything else.
Same here. Have you used it?
What's up?
Have you used any copper loads at all?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yep.
The CRX I've used, from Hornady. The GMX I've used from Hornady as well. I think for whitetail deer, it's not my favorite bullet for whitetail deer. I think you're not talking about a lot of bone mass and bone structure when shooting an animal like that, and so I mean, I've killed deer with that. It kills them, no doubt, but I don't get I don't. It zips through them so fast, and I love to hunt the Texas brush country and even old Mexico, and man, if a deer gets off the road on you there, you need a blood trail, or you're going to need to call in dogs, or I think the copper bullets, in my personal opinion, I like for the bigger boned animals like elk and bigger. You know what I mean? Moose. I like to use a lot of those hard bullets in Africa. Buffalo and that kind of stuff. So, but for whitetail deer and pronghorn and mule deer and even elk, I like a softer bullet.
Yep.
I like more lead core designed, bullet.
It's really they really do the trick. I've used both. I agree with you though on a deer. I've had troubles, and one thing that you bring up, and blood trailing in Texas, that could be a show in and of itself, because that is difficult, man. I mean, it's almost like a sponge.
We've got some great houndsmen down in our area. Roy Hines is a legend. And I've had to call him in on deer where I couldn't. I mean, they didn't go far; they were dead. As TV producers, we have the luxury of being able to review a kill shot on spot now today, and and you see it on camera and you say, God, I hit that deer perfect, but and there's blood trail, but then he gets in the brush and you just can't find him, and I've had to call dogs in numerous times, and the deer's not 100 yards from where I shot him and dead, but yeah, it can be difficult down here. Plus, everything sticks you and scratches you. And
that's true.
It's fun to walk through.
Any close encounters for you in the past few years with anything like a spider, snake, anything like that?
Yeah, it's real funny. The last deer I had we did a TV episode. I think it was 2 years ago. It was on my personal lease. It's when I shot that 180-inch deer, my best Texas free range deer. And I shot him with that 275 Rigby at about 90 yards and hit him perfect, and he did everything. He did everything he was supposed to do when you make a good shot on a whitetail deer, other than he jumped a fence like he wasn't hit at all. And that, if I remember correctly, I said to the camera, "I don't like that. I didn't like that," and went to look for him and found a little bit of blood, not a whole lot, and reviewed the footage over and over again. And me and my field producer were just like, "That deer's got to be dead." Never have I had that Hornady bullet fail me. But I called Roy Hines, who I was just speaking about, who lived about an hour away, and told him what I had going on. And he said, "Can you send me a video clip?" And so we did real quick. We videoed, with our phone to the video camera, sent it to him, and he responded. His text message was, "I'm on my way." And so that made me feel good. A lot of times when you wound a deer, they go to water eventually, especially in Texas, because I think it got to be about 90 degrees that day or 95 degrees that day, and once they get pretty, you know, that inflammation gets in their body and they get heated up, they get fevered, they'll go to water. And people don't believe me when I say this. In the desert country of South Texas, this being south of San Antonio, a lot of those areas that have water in them are full of alligators.
My gosh.
And I have 6 ponds on that place, and they all have alligators on them. And people just, I mean, there's some of my social media in the past, you'll see some of that alligator footage. And so we checked all the ponds before we turned a dog loose, certainly, right, to see if the deer was around any of those ponds. And we have one old female alligator that we actually named her. Her name's Frances. She's just not afraid of humans. And she'll just come right up to your feet. If she hears a pickup truck coming, the vibration coming down a road, she's already coming towards that direction. And I scared old Roy Hines pretty good, because we were walking around the edge of that pond, and here she popped her head up about 3 feet from his feet on the water's edge, and he jumped back into me. But no, I've only had that, rattlesnakes. I've been around them a lot. I don't like them. As long as I can see them, I'm fine with them, But no, I never have been struck or anything. I've been charged by some other animals in other places. I had a black bear charge in BC several years ago. I think that's on our YouTube channel. It's received millions of views, and some other people have stolen and grabbed it. And
Isn't that annoying? People do that to us all the time.
Man. I had somebody stop me the other day, a friend of mine I hadn't seen in years. He's like, "Man, we were surfing through YouTube and you popped up." And I said, "What?" And I said, "Yeah, it was a bear charge, and it was some site that does animal encounters or whatever." And yeah, we had a black bear that just never had it happen with all the black bear hunts I've been on. I've seen some bluff charges and stuff, and we always, of course, make it very clear right now, respect the wildlife. We don't want to ever, pressure we never pressure our wildlife ever, but this bear had literally had his butt kicked by, another bear. And we had stalked up on him and decided to pass on him. And then we had a wind shift. And when he smelt us, he saw us, and boy, he just came. I mean, I had to shoot him at about 15 feet. If I didn't, he was going to get one of us, me or and I'm not talking about just a loping charge. I'm talking about
full on charge.
Full on charge.
Yeah. Well, you've been pretty lucky. I haven't experienced it myself, but I've had guides. One guy was bit by a brown recluse.
Shit.
But you guys are tougher than nail. My God. He's like, "Yeah, something got me. I don't know what it was." And then all of a sudden I find out the next week he's like in the ER being flown to like Rice Medical Center or something. What? He goes, "Yeah, I got bit by a brown recluse when we were cutting brush to make that blind." I'm like, "Oh my God." Did you lose your leg or something?
That happened to me in Africa. I was on a safari in Africa one year, and I've done 30-something safaris now. And I've been exposed to stuff. I've been exposed to African tick bite fever. It's not pleasant. it's like a bad flu, but they say that, it's much like our Rocky Mountain or spotted
Yep.
Rocky Mountain tick fever that we have here in North America. And they say that once you've already kind of been exposed to it, it's not, if you're exposed to it again, it doesn't mean you can't get the fever again, but sometimes your symptoms, you kind of build an immunity to it. And problem with it can be is that, if you've been exposed to it before, sometimes it can lay dormant in you after you've been exposed to it again. And it can actually be doing stuff that you don't realize, you don't feel. And so,
Dang.
I had been exposed to it a couple of times and had the normal symptoms and treated. It's a very easy way to treat it. It's a very generic or cheap doxycycline, is the antibiotic that they use to treat that stuff. But on one safari, I had actually taken my mom and I'd taken two camera guys on it, and they all got sick while we were there at the end of the safari. And I knew what it was. And I was feeling fine. And we got them on meds, right there at the end of the trip. And my mom was already starting to feel better once on the flight home and getting home. And about a week or 10 days after we were home, I woke up one morning and I was a little short of breath. I thought, dang. I mean, like literally, I just getting out of bed and walking to my bathroom. I was like, I really struggled and thought, man, I don't know what a heart attack feels like. I don't know what, and I thought this isn't right. And I went to just a little doc in the box clinic and, told them where I'd been, gave them my symptoms. They did a little exam on me, said, oh, you've got some postnasal drips and bacteria. Let's get you on an antibiotic. So I don't know, azithromycin pack or something they put me on. And what is that, a 4 or 5 day pack, where you take that medication. And I was clearly not feeling any better. And by day 5, I remember getting up in the morning and I didn't even have the energy to put a shirt on.
Wow.
Called my family and said, you got to come get me, something's not right, and I mean, I need help walking to the car. Long story short, I had pneumonia and I had a walking pneumonia. And I was admitted to the hospital. I told them I'd been in Africa, so they had put me in the tuberculosis wing, just, in case it had been that. Running test after test. It took 5 days for them to figure it out. I was working with a disease infectious doctor, and Larry Wassoon, with his wildlife disease background, got him working with my disease infectious doctor over, because my disease infectious doctor was wanting to know what types of animals I was around, and there was something that sable, the sable antelope carries, and I don't remember the technical name now, but they were concerned it might have been something, and my mom had shot a sable. So we were very hands-on with the sable. Anyway, it ended up not being that. It ended up being tick fever. And that fever just had kind of settled in my lungs, and it can do that. It can attack organs. It can attack the lining of your heart. It can really be dangerous, but you don't ever have the symptoms or show the symptoms, because I had been, exposed to it before. So really set me back for about like 3 months, on that. So now, when I go to Africa, I usually live on a doxycycline or an antibiotic while I'm
A little preemptive.
there.
Yeah.
Other than that, all the travels around the world, other than the typical little stomach bugs and stuff that you get from food or water, that's been the most major.
Well, relatively lucky then, with a couple exceptions.
Oh yeah, I lost it was stupid. I lost 30 pounds in 10 days.
Well, maybe I need to go. No, I'm just kidding.
No, you don't want to
go there to lose 30 pounds. No, I'll do it the old-fashioned way. His name is Blake Barnett. He is host of Trailing the Hunter's Moon. Correct me if I'm wrong, Blake. This is on Pursuit Channel.
Got it. It's on Pursuit Channel, and we also are on their digital network, the Pursuit Up, and Carbon TV as well.
Carbon TV, Pursuit Up. We know that very well. Wow. Do you know what your days and times are on Pursuit?
Right now we're off the air. We're third and fourth quarter. We were Wednesday mornings, Wednesday evenings, and Saturday mornings. I think those times. Saturday mornings, I believe, were at 10:30 or 11. Wednesday morning was at 9 a.m. and Wednesday night at 9:30 is what it is.
So you guys can set your DVRs Saturday mornings to watch Blake's show, and then Saturday night deer camp for deer and deer hunting's 2-hour programming block. Blake, I want to thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. We almost blew through a whole hour here. I think we could have gone through another at least hour or more, but that just means we have to get you back on again.
Hey, I appreciate it, you guys. Thanks for reaching out. Thanks for having me. And let's definitely do it again. Let's get in a deer camp soon.
Sounds good. And catch a few bass. You can send us pictures, but you can keep the 95 degrees down there.
Yeah, well, it's going to be 95 again today, and there's no wind. So I'm going to get after it here just as soon as we get off the off the.
All right. Thanks a lot, Blake. For
Take
Blake
care,
Barnett, I am Dan Schmidt. Thank you for joining us for Deer Talk Now. All we ask you to do is like and subscribe wherever you're listening to this podcast or watching this podcast, watching it on YouTube, Facebook, over on our website, deeranddeerhunting.com, or listening to the podcast on, I'm not going to list all 14 podcast networks. We thank you so much. We're going to catch you next Thursday for another new episode. And until then, thanks for watching and listening to Deer Talk Now. Deer Talk Now is brought to you by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. Whether I'm in a tree stand, ground blind, or spot and stalk hunting, I know the Nitro 505 is up to any challenge. Check one out at a dealer near you or log on to 10pointcrossbows.com for more information.